But beneath the grumbling, they could all see that Jolene was shaken. The card represented a door to a life she had only ever dreamed of, a fantasy whispered to herself on lonely nights. She was Jolene Hunnicutt, waitress friend's stock car enthusiast. The idea of being Jolene Hunnicutt, country music star, was too vast, too frightening to comprehend. "What would I even do?" she asked Alice in a quiet moment, tracing the embossed letters on the card with her fingernail. He said to call him. "What would I say?" "You'd say, 'Hello, Mr. Rogers, this is Jolene Hunnicutt. You told me I had a voice, and I'm ready to use it,'" Alice said, her voice firm and encouraging. With the combined relentless encouragement of Alice and Vera, Jolene finally made the call. She huddled in the corner by the payphone, her back to the diner, her voice a nervous whisper. The entire diner held its breath, pretending not to listen. When she hung up, her face was pale. "He wants me to send him a demo tape," she announced. A demo tape. The word sounded impossibly professional, impossibly real. A tape of what Mel demanded. Her complaining about her tips, of me singing Mel Jolene, set a new spark of determination in her eyes. He wants to hear 3 songs. And just like that, Mel's Diner was transformed into a makeshift recording studio. The mission to capture the magic that Smiley Rogers had heard in that one unguarded moment. Their first attempt was in the storeroom for soundproofing. Alice acted as producer Vera as the wildly over-enthusiastic backup singer and dancer, and Mel as the chief heckler and sound engineer operating a clunky cassette recorder he'd owned since the 1,970 seconds. "Okay, Jolene from the top," Alice said, trying to sound professional. Jolene took a deep breath and began to sing, her clear, beautiful voice filling the small, flour-dusted room. Crash. Hold it," Mel yelled. "The pickle jar just fell over. You're singing off-key. You knocked the pickles out of whack." They tried again. This time, Vera, caught up in the emotion of the ballad, began to sob loudly, her wails providing an unwanted and deeply distracting harmony. Their final desperate attempt took place late at night after the diner was closed. Alice had the idea to record in the main dining room for the acoustics. She stood on a chair, holding the microphone, a cheap model Mel had plugged into the cassette player, while Jolene stood by the jukebox trying to recapture the spontaneous magic of that afternoon. "Okay, honey, sing from the heart," Alice coached. Jolene closed her eyes and began. The song was a classic, a story of love and loss that suited her voice perfectly. The notes were pure, the emotion was real. For a moment, it was perfect. And then from the kitchen came a loud, rhythmic, metallic scraping sound. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Alice threw her hands up in exasperation. "Mel, what are you doing?" Mel poked his head out from the kitchen pass-through, wearing a look of deep concentration. "What, I'm scraping the griddle. It's the only time I can get a good, deep clean—" "You're ruining the demo tape." "What's more important?" He demanded some silly singing career or a sanitary food preparation surface. "I got standards, Hyatt." Exhausted and defeated, they slumped into a booth. The tape was a disaster, a collection of false starts, falling pickles, sentimental sobbing, and the percussive stylings of Mel's griddle scraper. The dream, it seemed, was over before it had even begun. Part A, Jolene's song, continued. Chapter 33. The gray light of dawn found them slumped in a booth, defeated. The cassette tape, a monument to their failed ambition, sat on the table between them. Jolene stared at Smiley Rogers' business card, the crisp white edges now looking mocking and cruel. "Well, that's that," she said, her voice flat and empty. She reached for the card. "It was a silly idea anyway. I'm a waitress. That's all I am." "Don't you dare throw that card away." Alice said, her voice quiet but fierce. She put her hand over Jolene's. "So the first take was a bust. So what? You think Loretta Lynn got it right on the first try? You think Dolly Parton didn't have to deal with somebody scraping a griddle while she was trying to sing? Dolly Parton probably owned the griddle Mel grumbled from the kitchen, where he was now admiring his gleaming handiwork. That's not the point," Alice insisted, her eyes locked on Jolene's. "The point is that man heard something special in your voice. I heard it. Vera heard it. Even Mel heard it, though. He'd rather swallow a whole bottle of hot sauce than admit it. I heard a caterwaul that was going to crack the pie case." Mel shot back, but his protest lacked its usual conviction. "It's no use," Alice Jolene sighed, pulling her hand away. "We don't have a professional studio. We don't have the right equipment. It's just a dream." The bell over the door jingled, startling them. It was Earl arriving for his pre-dawn coffee, a daily ritual as reliable as the sunrise. He took in the scene, the exhausted faces. the cassette player on the table, the palpable air of gloom. "Rough night," he asked, sliding onto a stool. You could say that Alice said managing a weak smile. She explained the situation, the record producer, the demo tape, the disastrous recording session sabotaged by pickles and percussion griddle. Earl listened patiently, sipping the coffee Alice poured him. When she was finished, he looked thoughtfully at the cassette player. "You know," he said slowly, "my nephew Randy, he's a good kid. A little weird, wears his baseball cap indoors, you know the type. But he's got a whole setup in his garage. Microphones, a mixing board, one of those. What'd you call it? A 4-track recorder. He and his buddies are in a band. They call themselves Asphalt Carnage." The four of them stared at him. "What kind of music do they play?" Vera asked nervously. "The kind that mostly involves screaming and loud guitars," Earl admitted. "But the point is, the garage is soundproofed. And when Randy's at his job bagging groceries, the place is empty. And he owes me. I helped him move a pinball machine last year. Thing weighed a ton." A slow smile spread across Alice's face. It was a long shot. It was a ridiculous, improbable, beautiful long shot. It was perfect. "Earl," she said, her voice filled with a newfound hope, "you are a lifesaver." "Just don't tell Randy's mother we were in the garage," Earl added. "She thinks Asphalt Carnage is a book club." Chapter 34. Randy's garage was a suburban teenager sanctuary. The walls were covered in egg cartons for soundproofing and posters of angry-looking bands. A drum set sat in one corner, shrouded in a dusty sheet like a sleeping beast. In the center of the room, on a rickety card table, was the recording equipment. It wasn't Starlight Records, but it was quiet, it was private, and there wasn't a griddle in sight. Jolene stood before the microphone, her hands clenched at her sides. Earl's nephew had shown them how to work the simple 4-track recorder and then dutifully left for his shift at the grocery store. Now, it was just her Alice and the silence. "I can't do it," Jolene whispered, her eyes wide with stage fright. "My throat's all tight." Alice put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Just close your eyes, honey," she said softly. "Forget we're here. Forget about Nashville and Smiley Rogers. Just sing. Sing like you did the other afternoon when you were just singing for yourself." Jolene took a deep, shaky breath. She closed her eyes. The image of the dusty garage faded, replaced by the familiar, comfortable landscape of the diner. She thought of the long, quiet afternoons, the hum of the coffee machine, the easy rhythm of her work. She thought of heartache, of joy, of all the small, unsung stories that made up a life. And then she sang. The voice that filled the garage was not the nervous whisper of a moment before. It was the voice of every woman who had ever loved and lost, of every dreamer who had ever looked up at a starry sky from a lonely stretch of highway. It was pure, raw, and achingly beautiful. She sang 3 songs, one after another, pouring every ounce of her hope and her history into the microphone. She sang of her mama's wisdom of a cheating lover in Tulsa and of the simple, profound joy of a Sunday afternoon drive. Alice stood by the mixing board, tears streaming down her face. She wasn't just listening to a demo tape being made, she was witnessing the birth of an artist. She was watching her friend step out from behind the counter and claim a part of herself she had kept hidden for far too long. When the last note faded, the silence in the garage was thick with emotion. Jolene opened her eyes, looking dazed and vulnerable as if waking from a dream. Was that okay?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Alice just shook her head, unable to speak. She walked over and wrapped her friend in a hug. "Okay," she finally managed to say, her voice thick. "Honey, that was everything." Chapter 35. The act of mailing the package felt like a sacred ritual. They stood in the post office, the small, padded envelope containing the cassette tape feeling impossibly heavy in Jolene's hand. The address, written in Alice's neatest print, seemed like a portal to another universe. Smiley Rogers A., Air Department, Starlight Records, Music Row, Nashville, Tennessee. Jolene slid the envelope through the slot. It disappeared with a soft thud. For a moment, she just stared at the empty slot, a look of terror and exhilaration on her face. She had done it. She had sent her voice, her story, out into the world. Life at the diner returned to a new kind of normal. The daily routines were the same. Coffee was brewed, eggs were fried, customers were served. But underneath it all ran a current of electric anticipation. Every time the phone rang, all 4 of them would jump. Mel's diner, Alice would answer, and a collective silent breath would be held until she said, "No, he's not interested in aluminum siding, thank you." Mel, of course, pretended to be completely indifferent. It's a fool's errand, Hyatt, he'd grumble flipping a burger with unnecessary force. She's got a better chance of being struck by lightning while riding a unicorn. But Alice would catch him in quiet moments staring at the phone on the wall as if willing it to ring. Weeks went by, the initial frantic hope began to fade, replaced by a quiet, resigned disappointment. Jolene never spoke of it, but they could see the light in her eyes had dimmed a little. She had taken her shot, and the world had answered with silence. Then on a slow, rainy Tuesday afternoon, the phone rang. Mel's Diner. Alice answered her voice, tired. She listened for a moment, her posture straightening. Yes, she is. Just a moment. She held the receiver out her hand, trembling slightly. Her eyes were shining. Jolene, she said, her voice a whisper, it's Nashville. The diner, which had been filled with the low hum of a rainy afternoon, fell utterly silent. The only sounds were the spatter of rain against the window and the frantic beating of Jolene's own heart. She walked toward the phone as if in a trance, her hand outstretched. Alice pressed the cool plastic of the receiver into her palm. Hello, Jolene's voice was a reedy whisper, a ghost of its usual confident twang. The rest of them huddled together shamelessly, eavesdropping. Mel leaned out of the kitchen pass-through, a spatula clutched in his hand like a scepter. Vera stood on her tiptoes, her hands clasped together in prayer.